over.
Okay.
So
So
Laura,
we just, we want to go ahead and start. We just went live on YouTube.
okay.
And let me just make sure recording. We are. So, hello. My name is Laura Peel, and I'm the JWB Director of Information Technology, and I'm going to be your technology moderator today. Committee members, I want to take a roll call to verify that audio communication is working. Please stay present to indicate that you can hear me. Now, please mute your device until you are called on to speak. Bob Dillinger,
Present.
Michael McCurrick,
Present.
Karen Seal,
Present.
Bernie McCabe,
Present.
Susan Ralston.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. I am Beth Houghton, CEO at JWB, and this Finance Committee meeting of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor DeSantis' Executive Order 20-69, dated March 20th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency throughout the state of Florida, given the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus and reduce risk of COVID-19 illness, we have been advised and directed by the state to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order, EO 20-69, suspends the requirement of the Sunshine Law to have all meetings in a specific public place and to require that a quorum be present in person. This order that is posted on the Juvenile Welfare Board's public notices website allows public bodies to utilize communications media technology to conduct its business. And for this meeting, JWB is convening via Zoom or teleconference posted on our website, which clarifies how the public may join and participate if they wish. A public meeting notice was published in the Tampa Bay Times on April 19th, 2020, as required by section 189.015 of the Florida statutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded on Zoom and YouTube Live. Also, some attendees are participating by telephone conference. Participants are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those persons are not required to identify themselves. So accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording and will become part of the public record of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County. Laura Peel, JWB Director of Information Technology, will serve as the technology moderator of the remote participation by JWB committee and board members, JWB staff, presenters, and the public. Laura, are you going to take a second check, roll call?
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Good afternoon. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bob Dillinger.
Affirmative.
Michael McCurrick.
Affirmative.
Susan Ralston. We
You're
can't hear you.
muted.
Unmute. So, thank you, I'm here.
Karen Seal.
Present?
Bernie McCabe.
I'm here.
Rick Butler.
Here.
And let's make sure Colleen Flynn can hear us and we can hear
I
her.
can hear you.
Okay, great. So staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Beth Houghton.
Here.
Judith Warren.
Present.
Laura Brock.
Here.
Lady.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Please mute your device until you are called on to speak.
And then I believe we have some other anticipated speakers on the agenda. Did you want to check on them?
I think we did have two staff members who possibly wanted to, may speak. I did not have them on the list, but I can check with them if you just give me a moment to ensure.
It would be Lynn De La Torre.
Yep. I'm looking for her on the list. Just give me one moment, please.
And Diana Caro.
And Lori Lewis.
And Lori Lewis. There's 3.
Yes, okay, so. Diana Caro, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I have to go down the list.
And
Lori Lewis, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. And Lynn De La Torre, can you hear me?
Lynn?
Okay, she was on here at, oh, there she is. Lynn,
Let's
can
go.
you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That would be everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. All of the materials for this meeting are posted on JWB's website with the agenda for the meeting. And we recommend that JWB's board members and the public follow the agenda as posted unless we note otherwise. So we're now turning to the agenda. And before we do so, permit me to cover some of the ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to assure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each item on the agenda. After staff has presented the item, the chair will entertain questions by the members. And for the members who can be seen, please physically raise your hand and the chair will call on you. And if you are on a telephone conference line, please press *9 so the moderator may unmute your line. And we will have a public comment before the vote on each action item and during the open agenda. So if you are not on the board, but you are a member of the public, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom webinar or press *9 if you are on a telephone conference line to be recognized to speak. The moderator will call on each person by name or the last 4 digits of the call-in phone number, if that's all that can be seen, allowing 3 minutes for comment. And finally, each vote will be taken as a roll call vote. Further, for all participants, board members, staff, and the public, please remember to mute your phone or device when you're not speaking. And please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. With that, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. McCabe.
Are we going to have everybody's picture up here?
We have all of the board member pictures up here.
All I'm seeing is you.
Change your view. It's in the upper right-hand corner of your iPad.
And there's something called grid view, I think.
Yes. And that'll allow you to see all members.
Okay, I got it. I got some of them.
It could be a limit of your screen, or you might have to change the setting again.
You probably have all the board members, Mr. McCabe.
Miss Seal. is
Now
making a comment.
I got it.
Okay.
I
And I'll-
figured it
Show everybody, but if you swipe the page to the left, it'll take you to the next page to see the rest of the folks.
And that would be on an iPad.
Yep, on an
Okay.
iPad.
Yeah, now I can see Rick Butler. And he's
All
got the flags behind him. Good man. Okay. First action item. If y'all recall, we approved doing a sole source award to the YMCA of the Suncoast for the middle school academies at Largo and Tarpon Spring. This is the details of that particular contract, and so I'll turn it over to Laura Brock, our CFO.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As your new Chief Financial Officer, I will be presenting some of the items today on the agenda and will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. As I continue to become familiar with the JWB policies and program efforts, I may not be well versed in answering some of your questions as they relate to the history or discussions that occurred prior to my tenure. In that regard, it may be necessary for me to call on some of my staff members and/or executive team to provide additional explanations or information, and I encourage them to speak up for the record and clarify if I make any statements that are incorrect, and I welcome their comments. So as the first item on the agenda is an action item 1A, as Mr. McCabe indicated, approval of the budget amendment and sole source award to the YMCA of the Suncoast of the Middle School Academies at Largo and Tarpon Springs Schools. You have the information regarding this item, but let me summarize for you. The middle school academies are directly tied to one of JWB's strategic focus areas, school success. JWB currently funds 7 middle school academies throughout Pinellas County, and these are schools based on academic-driven out-of-school time programs that operate year-round. Back in November 2019, the Finance Committee discussed a strategy of adding 3 additional sites to Azalea, Largo, and Tarpon Springs. The board agreed to invest an additional $800,000 in fiscal 20 to expand the middle school academies with additional schools in the mid and north county areas. The first criteria we looked at to place the program was the C, D, and F schools, which were considered the high need schools. And of course, they also show up in our high risk areas. The 3 schools identified were the only remaining schools in the county that fit that criteria. The Finance Committee recommended we sole source the Largo and Tarpon Springs programs to the YMCA of the Suncoast, and staff is recommending a budget amendment to do so. The prorated recommendation award amount for fiscal 20, which would be for the period of June 1, 20 through September 30, 20, the end of our fiscal year, is $32,243 for Largo and $30,067 for Tarpon Springs, representing a total of $62,310, which thereby reduces the budgeted amount of $800,000 to $737,690. The anticipated annualized award for fiscal 21 moving forward is $232,580 for Largo and $200,156 for Tarpon Springs, a total of $432,736. In addition, the timeline for the RFP for the Azalea Middle Schools, which we are not sole sourcing, that has been revised due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and interviews have been scheduled with the Boys and Girls Club of Suncoast and the YMCA of St. Petersburg, and we have scheduled those for May 22nd. Hopefully that will continue on track with the anticipation of executing an agreement on August 1st of 2020. So we have an action item on the board to approve the budget amendments. I'll turn it back over to Mr. McCabe.
Is there a motion to approve the amendment?
So moved.
By Mr. McCurrick, is there a second?
Second, Dillinger.
Second by Mr. Dillinger. Are there any questions regarding the amendment?
I'm going to
Okay.
give it just a moment. I don't see any.
Is there a public comment?
I do not see any public comment.
All right, and I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
So as I call your name, please state your vote. Bernie McCabe,
Aye.
Bob Dillinger,
Aye, in favor.
Mike McCurrick, Michael McCurrick,
Approve.
Rick Butler, Rick Butler, need you to unmute. There we go.
Aye.
Karen Seal.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion approved unanimously. Moving on to the second item, ratification of CEO approvals of contract for emergency funding and emergency purchases as of April 14th, 2020. Laura Brock.
Thank you. This is a two-part ratification. The first part is dealing with the JWB Board Policy Section 5-6 under Financial Emergency Response. That states that JWB Chief Executive Officer is delegated the authority to approve contracts for emergency funding from the JWB contingency budget to meet urgent needs. The CEO is to report the use of the contingency budget to the board and seek ratification. The current contingency budget is $500,000. We have a schedule attached to this agenda item, which has been provided, showing 5 items totaling $417,462 that have been spent out of the contingency budget. These items represent amounts that were approved between the period of March 23rd, 2020 to April 14, 2020 for emergency funding due to the COVID-19 pandemic. These items include $200,000 to GA Foods, which is a one-time increase to JWB funded food programs due to the significant increases in food donations, decreases to food donations to the different food banks. Second item is a $50,000 cleanup and repair to the multiplex building over at CASA to GM Scott. Third item is $53,462 to the Directions of Mental Health. Again, this is a one-time increase to the children's outpatient program to assess with technology needs and upgrades to allow for telehealth services during this pandemic. Number 4, the Safety Harbor Neighborhood Family Center, $14,000. This was a one-time increase that was necessary due to their food pantries becoming bare and them not even able to have a fundraiser in effect at the time that would have replenished that food pantry. And the last item, $100,000 to the St. Petersburg Free Clinic to acquire bulk food purchases for distribution to the 4 food banks, including Tarpon Springs Shepherd Center, RCS, St. Pete Free Clinic, and the Florida Dream Center. This leaves a balance in the contingency budget of $82,538. In addition, under Board Policy Section 6 regarding purchasing and contracting, specifically under paragraph H, this states that the Chief Executive Officer may make authorized emergency purchases of goods and services in the event of a disruption of essential operations or where exists a threat to the public health, welfare, and safety. Emergency purchases in excess of $50,000 are required to be reported to the board. You have a schedule in your agenda packet again, which shows these items that we're talking and discussing with today. So the 3 emergency purchases contracts includes the Jim Scott contract that I mentioned earlier, the GA Foods contract that I mentioned earlier as well for $200,000, and the Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger, which is a contract which allowed them up to $27,726 for the Meals on Wheels for Kids program, which was a pilot program. Mr. McCabe, we are looking for ratification of the emergency funding and emergency purchases of goods and services.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any comment on that? I know I do. Bob? Mr. Dillinger?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that wherever we give food, if they do these drive-in things or drive-through, that arrangements are made for people who don't have cars to get food.
Okay.
To my
Anybody?
knowledge, that's the case in the largest of these. I can't account for every one of the pantries, but I know that at RCS and at the Dream Center and at the St. Pete Free Clinic, those allowances have been made. And that's a very good point.
The only comment I would make, I have no issue with any of these items. But I think it might be beneficial that the Finance Committee be notified of them shortly after the deals are made, so that we're not given a bulk of them at one time for a meeting. I know I would like to know more timely what we're doing, especially in an emergency situation where we're draining our contingency fund and making emergency contracts. And I wonder if there's some way, Beth, that you could let us know, I don't know, 72 hours, whatever, 96 hours after the deal is done?
Absolutely. I would want you to know that I was essentially doing that on a real-time basis with your chair, Susan Ralston, but I would be more than happy to do that with you or to the entire finance committee.
Well, I would like it, the entire finance committee.
That I'm happy to do that.
And it doesn't need to be a phone call. You can do it by email or whatever. That'd be fine.
Because I think that I went back and looked at the board updates that I gave, and all of these were included in an April 14th update, but they were not made on the kind of timeliness that you just talked about. And that is entirely possible to do. Happy to do
Okay.
that.
Anybody else got any comments? Okay, is there a motion to ratify the expenditures?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Dillinger,
Second by
Second by-
Commissioner.
Commissioner Seal. Any public comment?
There is no public comment.
All right, please do a roll call vote.
Okay, when I call your name, please state your vote. Bernie McCabe,
Aye.
Bob Dillinger,
Aye.
Mike McCurrick,
Aye.
Rick Butler,
Yes.
Karen Seal.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay. The next one is to approve a 60-day extension of the emergency response compensation period. CEO Beth Houghton, please.
As you may know, embedded already in the policies of the Juvenile Welfare Board, we provide for an up to 60-day continuation of our program funding, so funding to our funded agencies, pursuant to their budget after a declared emergency. And that has allowed us to keep those funded agencies funded up to their budgeted amounts during this time. But that 60 days will end, I want to say March 12th. Anyway, it will end just before the next board meeting. And it would be staff's and the executive group's recommendation that given the unknowns, even if things are reopened, they may be reclosed, that we recommend to you that we extend that first 60 days by another 60 days so that we are able to continue to fund our agencies should some or all of them have to be closed during some or all of that next 60-day period of time.
Okay. What declaration of emergency is this policy activated upon? The governor's declaration or the Pinellas County Commission's declaration?
I want to say it's the counties, but Diana, I'm going to look to Diana to know for sure.
Diana, you may speak now.
Yes, that's correct. It's Pinellas County's.
Okay.
Okay. All right, because the governor's original stay at home and all of that expires, I think, Wednesday. But if that's not what's governing us, we would wait for whatever the county does, correct?
Well, it's 60 days after the original declaration of disaster, and I'm sure it was, or emergency, and I'm sure it was done with the thinking of hurricanes, and that is to say that even once the emergency period is no longer in effect, roofs may be off the building.
Okay, I
other
got
things.
you. I understand. Any other comment?
Sounds like Laura Brock has something.
Just wanted
Laura?
to clarify, Beth indicated that the period ended on March 12th, and I think you meant May 12th.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
I'll give it just a moment, but it does not look like there is any public comment.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the 60-day extension?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dillinger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, we're fighting between Mr. McCurrick and Commissioner Seal. We'll give it to Mr. McCurrick this time. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Yes, when I call your name, please state your vote. Bernie McCabe,
Aye.
Bob Dillinger,
Aye.
Mike McCurrick,
Aye.
Rick Butler,
Aye.
Karen Seal.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, approved budget amendment to increase contingency budget. Beth, that's yours.
At this point, we have a contingency budget remaining for the year of about $82,000. And consistent with my earlier discussion and commitment to you that I would very timely let you know about any use of that, we really don't have much to deal with for the upcoming months. And given our budget as a whole, the amount of money we are likely to lapse this year, the executive team is recommending to you that we increase that contingency line item on our budget for the current fiscal year by $500,000, bringing it up to a full amount of $1 million.
All right, any comment on that from any members? Seeing none, is there any public comment?
I do not see any public comment.
All right, is there a motion to approve
So moved.
by Mr. Dillinger? Is there a second? I'll give you this one, Karen.
Second.
Commissioner Seal, second. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, when I state your name, and when I call your name, please state your vote. Bernie McCabe,
Aye.
Bob Dillinger,
Aye.
Mike McCurrick,
Aye.
Rick Butler,
Yes.
Karen Seal.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. That's the last action item. We have discussion. Fiscal 21 budget development calendar and funding parameters. Laura Brock.
Yes, thank you. So you have attached to this agenda item, you have a development calendar that we've put together as far as the procedures and steps necessary to get our budget implemented and processed. We kicked off the budget internally on March 31st with the general budget submissions that were due to our budget staff by April 15th. And we are scheduled to have further discussions regarding the proposed budget, millage rate, and a revised 5-year forecast at the June 25th Finance Committee meeting. But today we're here to discuss some scenarios that we've put together relative to forecasting. And these are projections and plans. We don't know what's happening currently with the COVID-19, what effects are going to be hitting us from a potential recession that people are talking about down the road. But we certainly want to take a look at a couple different scenarios as far as our budget and get some feedback and input from you all relative to that. So I am going to share a document with you.
We can see it.
Okay, so we have two 5-year planning forecasts that we put together. Both planning forecasts are assuming that the collection percentage for your tax revenues will decrease from 97% to 95%. And we just did that for the 1 year. And that was more in line with thinking that as far as the general public or the taxpayers paying their property bills, that we might have a decline in that particular area. But then we've put it back up to 97%. The first forecast, which we're looking at here, and I'm just going to focus on the revenues, is projecting properties to increase as they have in the past. And we've used the same property values as the county has done as well. We had not changed any millage rate in that regard, but in looking at this scenario, we see that the properties values continue to go up as do our revenues. As far as other revenues, the 935,000 represents a big chunk of investment earnings. We don't know what's going to happen with that as well, so we have not taken a hard look at that as well. And so from the revenue side, when we have additional revenues, how are we going to spend that? We've kind of projected here that we would increase the capital RFA funding, the non-funding programs, 2 million, 3 million, 3 million, and the future programming in line with the strategic planning, we would anticipate increasing that just keeping it at 250 for fiscal 21 and then increasing it accordingly 2 million, 3 million, and 4 million. And that again would be in line with the strategic plan that the board is putting together. This is keeping in mind that these numbers are increasing, as I indicated earlier. With this scenario, and also pointed out in the contingency. So our contingency budget was 500. You just made a budget amendment to increase it to $1 million. And so we have budgeted $1 million for the 4 years moving out to fiscal year 24 as well. We continue to balance our budget, which basically means that we're utilizing some of our prior year reserve money. But in this particular scenario, we would end up with 31% undesignated fund balance percentage, which our maximum target is 8.3, which is a 1 month goal or target. And that's over and above the 2 month amount that we have in our undesignated fund balance for your cash flows. If we look at the second scenario, again, I'm focusing on the revenues. The percentage is also same it is on the first scenario, decreasing it to 95% in fiscal year 21. All other years will remain at 97. However, you're starting to see that the decrease in the property value amounts. We went back to the recession that we had in 2008, and we looked at the decrease in the property value percentages, as well as the change in the millage rate that kicked in during that period of time, again, back in 2008. In using that scenario and using these budget numbers, you can see that the revenues obviously continue to decline. Having said that, we did not budget any CRA funding or future programming expenditures. However, we did want to continue with the contingency budget amount of $1 million, which we certainly can discuss and talk about that. What this scenario is pointing out to us here is that in order to maintain a balanced budget in this particular out in year 24, we would have needed to dip into our fund balance by $23.9 million, which brings us down to a negative unassigned fund balance, which we would no longer maintain our target of 8.3 or 1 month additional reserves over and above the 2 month reserves. So what this is just trying to focus and point out to us is that if it continues the way it did back in 2008, we would be able to utilize our surplus funds and fund balances and bring us to the fiscal year 24 year. Having said that, on the revenue side, a couple items to highlight on the expense side or expenditures. I'll go back to the first scenario. So on the expenditure side, we did factor in a 3% cost of living for salaries for each of these years. That was keeping in line with maintaining talent and compensation levels. However, we certainly understand in times of recessions, when people are looking at budgets and so forth, that may be something that we want to consider to look at. In the fringe benefit area, we factored a 15% fringe, with exception of fiscal year 21, where we felt like a 25% fringe benefit allocation or percentage would be possibly more appropriate due to health insurance and primarily with the COVID-19, with those additional expenses that more than likely would incur. So on the second scenario as well, same thing. We had the 3%. We have to start somewhere, so we use that. We've been using, JWB has implemented a 3% COLA increase since 2017, fiscal 17, which was in line with Pinellas County. The COLAs for the programs that we have budgeted, that also has been in effect since fiscal year 17. And that is based on a 3-year average. So for example, if a program lapse was less than 1.5%, they would receive a 5% increase. If their program lapse was between 1.5% and 4%, they would receive a 3% increase. And if the lapse was between 4.01 and 5%, they would receive a 1% increase. This is the way apparently the budget has been prepared in years past. And again, using a 3-year average for that scenario. So I will stop here. Let's see here. And see if we have questions relative to the projections that we put together. This is a work in progress. We'd love to get some feedback from you relative to that, but I think it's a good food for discussion.
Let me add next, just that we're well aware that if it's clear we're heading into a recession, that a 3% COLA has got to be on the table to discuss. And so at this stage of the game, we wanted to present you, I won't say best case, worst case, but sort of the first scenario pretty much reflects a pre-COVID look and where we would have been. And the second is a projection that we actually began putting together 5 or 6 months ago, just to look at what if we had a recession. None of us, I think we can all say with some assurance, we are either in or we're at the beginning of a serious recession. How long it will be, how deep it will be is very hard to say at this stage of the game. But neither of the projections that you see are exactly what we expect to see in a final budget.
All right, any questions or comments regarding the projection? No? Okay.
Just real quick, I
Mike?
agree. I agree. I don't know how well we can project anything. I think you've got a good start on where we are. And I think that, we're going to have to very carefully watch what is going to transpire over the next weeks, months, even more, to see where we end up. But I think, it's a good thing that we're looking at it and preparing for what could be, I'll think, worst case scenario.
Commissioner Seal.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McCabe. I guess the one issue that I would like to think about in advance is the program COLA. I remember that we were all in favor of making sure that it wasn't just JWB staff that got COLAs, but that our partnership agencies did as well. But what I didn't know is that they could get up to a 5%. I don't think we should ever exceed going over what the cost of living index is. So if 3% is the max of where the COLA index is, then we should do that accordingly. I didn't realize that we allowed above a COLA. So just wanted to express that as a concern.
Let me ask Lori Lewis to speak to that, because I think it has to do with how we've calculated what we add to the budget for that entity, but not necessarily what the COLA for the individuals is. Lori?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct, Beth. So basically the 5% isn't necessarily, we call it a COLA, but it's not necessarily what is given to staff. This is to provide an increase for all their operating costs, whether it be staff, because we don't dictate that it has to go to staff because we can't. So staff it will be based on what the provider gives to staff versus other operating costs that have increased.
Oh, that raises another question. Do they have to tell us how they're going to spend it?
Yes.
And do we have the right to say, no, you won't?
Yes, we do.
Okay. The way I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was reimbursement for lapse? No?
Reimbursement for lapse? No, it's based off of their lapse history. So if they've had very little lapse history, the less that they had, the more of an increase they were given. So if they had less than 1.5% for the last 3 years, we gave them a higher COLA.
Right. Okay, I guess.
Well,
But
they're disincentivized to have a lot of lapse is what this formula would do.
The way you disincentivize lapse is
Correct.
you reduce their next year budget by the lapse amount.
Well, this goes in that direction in a significant way.
Okay. That's the way the state does it. They take the money away from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. COVID-19 federal stimulus. Laura Brock.
We are aware, we're in the middle of a stimulus package that the government enacted. And that included a couple of different loan opportunities, if you would, through the CARES Act. So there's the economic injury disaster loan and specifically the Paycheck Protection Program. And when that was rolled out, and we know that was additional funding that was just put in, and I believe today the funding was available to the bankers at 10:30 this morning. So it'd be interesting to see how long it takes for that to get distributed. But I understand also that they've put a little more restrictions on it relative to focusing on the smaller banks and the community banks, as opposed to the large bank institutions, as well as a few restrictions on who can actually receive the money, because there are certain entities, whether they're publicly traded or have different ways of getting equity funding, having to return those funds. Having said that, Juvenile Welfare Board is committed to assisting our funded agencies and helping them in obtaining financial assistance through these SBA loans. So we put together some information that we provided to all of our neighborly family services as well as our provided agencies. And we worked in conjunction with our banking institution, which is BB&T. So BB&T was very helpful. And this is, back when the first pool, if you would, of funds were available through the application process. They provided us with hands-on information, specific contact folks, specifically that they could reach out to get assistance. And it's our understanding that several of the agencies have applied for loans. There were a couple of them that perhaps didn't meet the qualifications, meaning they had more than 500 employees. There were also a handful of agencies or not-for-profits that we're waiting to hear back from the lender. The application was submitted, but it had not yet been approved. So we're going through that scenario with them. And now with the second batch of funding now available, we're hoping that several of those that were in the pool, so to speak, might be able to get those loans approved. As of last week, Friday, we had 23 agencies that had informed us that they had applied for the loans. Like I said earlier, some of which are still waiting to hear back, some of which have gotten the money. But the folks that had received money through Friday were $2.5 million in funds that they were able to receive. So we were encouraging them to apply for these loans. Having said that, we wanted to make sure that they were very much aware that there could be a potential of double dipping, and we wanted to make sure they understood that caveat. And if they were to receive a loan or get applied, and ultimately the loan was forgiven, they would need to remit those funds back to JWB. So we wanted to make sure that they were cognizant of that and understood that process. And having said that, we've asked them to inform us if they've applied, send us a copy of the application so we can continue to monitor that. Like I said, we don't want to wait until the dust settles and the loans have been forgiven, and then we find out that they're in a scenario that they would be penalized and have some other issues that they're facing. Once the dust does settle with all of these loans, we think it's prudent that we would either internally take a look at this or maybe consult with an outside consultant to come in and evaluate and look at how those funds were spent and were returned to make sure we didn't have any issues. But our purpose here of just throwing this on the agenda is just to inform you that we have spoken with our funded agencies. We've encouraged them to apply for these loans, and many of them have. Any questions or comments on that, Mr. McCabe?
Any questions or comments regarding COVID-19? Seeing none. Okay, we'll go on to the monthly financial investment report. Laura Brock.
Thank you. When I joined JWB, I expected to see the monthly financial statements on your finance committee agenda, and they were not. It's my understanding that they're sent out monthly to each of you, but I thought it'd be prudent to put it on the finance committee agenda. Although you don't meet on a monthly basis, I think it's still important for us to include that as an item to discuss and look at. So I will share this again with you. So I just wanted to highlight a few items for you in looking at your statements. So keep in mind, these are statements through the end of March, so they do not include April activity. And March is a 6-month period for us, so 50% if you would. And I don't know if you can see this well with your handout or on the screen up here, but you have a pretty healthy balance sheet. Most of the cash are held in cash and investments, as we can see here. Virtually no debt other than the liabilities for your pension plans. And in your equity section and your fund balance section, we've got the assigned cash flow requirement, which is again the board policy to maintain 2 months of your operating expenses as a cash reserve, and then the additional 1 month for unforeseen areas. So technically, if you were to combine the two of those items, it would be a 25% reserve of your cash flow items or your unrestricted items, if you would. Looking at the income statement or the statement of revenues and expenditures, just a couple of things to point out. When you look at the year-to-date numbers, you have to understand that we're looking at a modified cash basis financial statement. So what that means is that your revenues, we've already picked up all the revenues for the property taxes that have come in. So when you're looking at your year-to-date numbers, and again, this is a 6-month snapshot, if you would, we have met 90% of the budget of our revenue side. However, on the expenditure side, that would be a different scenario because we're spending the money as we go through the year. So on a year-to-date basis, your program and administrative funds are at 41% of budget, 33.2% of budget, for a total of 34% of your total expenses. So one would think that that's a good thing because we're 6 months into the year and 50% might be a little more accurate. However, when you look at the monthly budget numbers, which is this scenario here, when we calculate our monthly budget, we have not in the past gone through to determine which months would some of these expenditures fall into. For example, if you had a summer school program, those would fall in different months perhaps than another program. The budget here on the monthly is the annual budget divided by 12. So when you look at the annual budget divided by 12, if you look at your programs, you're at 99% spent for this particular month, again, which is March, and you can see the other expenses. So you're pretty much in line with our expenses relative to the budget. This is looking at the same thing. If you're looking at your budget to actual, some people like pictures better than numbers. This sometimes puts it a little bit more in perspective. Also, you can see this is the administrative budget, and you can see where we are, budget being in blue, actual being in the orange, and you can see we're under budget in all of these areas: executive office, administration, business, finance and technology, and the community planning program quality. These are the contracts that have been signed that particular month. So every month when you receive this monthly financial statement packet, you receive a list of the contracts and budget transfers that had occurred. And you can see those identified as well. And then the other information that's required to be reported to the board is your investment information. So here is a snapshot of the investments that we hold, again, at the end of the period of March 31 snapshot. All of your funds are primarily in liquid cash positions. We've got funds held at BB&T, which I indicated earlier was our primary banking institution where our operating account is. However, we're not making much money on that. You can see the money market account is the average rate of return on that is 0.3%. Regions Bank is offering a little more, 0.45. So we've got $11 million with Regions. And then the rest of the funds are in either one of the two SBA loan investment accounts, the Florida Local Government Investment Trust and the Florida Prime. We're getting a little better interest on these particular programs, 1.06%, 1.36%, but the yield for the particular month is $73,000. We are well below our budgeted target for investment or earnings this year, obviously because of the volatility in the market. So our budget is $950,000. Our annual budget year to date is $475, and we're at $354. I would not expect us to meet that budget going forward. Looking at our breakout by institution, so you can see we've got funds invested, as I said earlier, Regions Bank, 17.4%, BB&T, the flight funds, and the Florida Prime. And if you're looking at by category, our investment policy indicates that we can invest up to 100% into savings, demand deposits, and certificate of deposits. As far as our investment pool, we could invest up to 75%, and we are at 71%. So we're in line with that as well. And this is just a comparison of the rate of return. Like I said earlier, last year we had earned more funds than we had in the current year. So I will stop sharing that and come back and see if we have any questions or comments relative to the monthly statements for the 6-month period ended March 31st.
No, thank you for sharing. Does anybody have any comment? Any comment? Hearing none. Beth Houghton's report. CEO's report.
There we go. I would tell you that the Juvenile Welfare Board staff continues to work remotely, but very hard and effectively with really all of the same technical abilities we had at the office, which again is real kudos to our IT staff who had us set up that way before we left. So on the day we left the office, everybody picked up their laptop and they were pretty much ready to go with access to everything. Otherwise, besides the over and above things we have been doing, there's been a lot of business as usual. Individual department budgets were submitted on time, invoices and statements are being processed and paid, public records requests are being fulfilled. We're having lots of virtual meetings between the staff as well as across our funded agencies, including town hall meetings in more or less this format, a video conference format, with me and all of the staff of JWB. So they hear what's going on, and we're also trying to keep it light for everybody, trying to do some fun things as well. We have a current hold on any new hires, less from a financial perspective than that it's just not the best time to onboard most kinds of folks. So we do anticipate a lapse in our salary line item. We did add one individual within the IT area, and we were right up before we went virtual. We were right up to that point of being able to make that hire, and that kind of individual can be onboarded in a virtual environment very well. We're holding virtual staff trainings. Most recently, we did an IT security training that's required every year. So we were able to do that. We've assured that in every regard, this meeting and all of our other activities are in compliance with sunshine and special district accountability laws. So we've stayed in contact with Colleen. There were a few days there where every one of her clients was calling her, and so getting 10 minutes with Colleen was very precious time indeed. Leadership, our leadership has also begun developing contingency plans for return to work scenarios, but I would say through an abundance of caution, because we can be effective in almost every regard working virtually, that we will be among the last to come back. And I think that's appropriate and safe. Some of the only things we just can't do in a virtual environment particularly well are site visits to our funded agencies. So I would see some of that going on before we return to the physical building. But we're doing things like making sure we have enough sanitizer everywhere, and that we've figured out how many people can be in every room, every meeting room in our facility with social distancing. So not the fire marshal number, but the social distancing number, things like that, so that we can return on an adjusted basis when the right time comes. I would tell you that besides the things that you heard from Laura Brock relative to our overall projection and budget, we have been combing through agency by agency to work on those budgets, really led by Lori Lewis. And there are a handful of funded agencies who have consistently lapsed significant amounts of money, and therefore some more significant. So we're not talking about a slight increase to their budget, but rather talking about a decrease to their budget. And those discussions are being held. We've made contact with those, and in some cases are scheduling second phone calls with their CEOs as they might want to hear about those. And we are in anticipation of reopening. We're proactively meeting with leaders to discuss best practices, best practice guidelines. We're also looking at scenarios for the community related to reopening of childcare, of out of school time, and of summer programming, much of which we fund. And we participate in the county's emergency operations center call, and that group appropriately has been focused on the immediate emergency or the potential spike in number of serious COVID cases. But we raised up the issue that as we're beginning to pivot to reopening the economy, that the adequacy of the capacity of childcare is going to be a serious issue. And there is no easy solution to this, but between a variety of factors, one of which is it's likely that as childcare is reopened, there will still be social distancing requirements, and so fewer students in a room or fewer students per teacher per staff person. That is going to mean with the same number of rooms and the same number of staff, you're going to be able to care for a smaller number of children. Secondarily, some number of our centers, smaller centers in particular, have just closed, and their staff eventually, if not already, have or will get onto unemployment insurance. And for as low as the pay is for childcare workers, unemployment insurance, as is enhanced by the federal $600 per week, may mean that many of these childcare workers simply don't want to return to work until unemployment benefits run out. And so that's going to be a significant difficulty. And we're hearing that from our childcare providers. So as a community, that's just going to be difficult, and it's going to be a difficulty in getting the workforce back if they don't have childcare. Childcare facilities are going to be struggling for cleaning supplies and for appropriate protective equipment for them, as well as dealing with a group of children who have been out of the routines of their childcare environment and may well have been dealing with trauma of one sort or another at home, just being isolated, the traumas their parents and their families are facing. As to COVID-19 relief funding, we continue to provide technical assistance, and as Laura Brock mentioned earlier, let our funded agencies know about other resources that are here for them. She talked about some of those. We have weekly calls with groups of providers, generally run by either Judith or Linda. And not only are we able to share information with them, they're able to let us know where they stand, if they're open, if they're closed, are they working virtually, how things are going. But we've also found a lot of cross-sharing of information. And so after every one of those, we're blasting out a lot of information about whatever that is, where to find food or what the website is for such and so. And that's been extremely helpful. COVID-19's impact to the state budget is obviously very unclear, as is the timing of a special session. That's going to impact a significant number of our funded agencies who depend significantly on state funds. And so it's going to change the landscape for the services out there for mental health in particular, and for other things. We've talked before, or this is a little bit backwards. We talked about what we had done about it, but as we listened to all the phone calls, we're able to really pick up on what the community needs are pretty well, because we have so many providers who are absolutely on the ground. And so needless to say, food shortages were one of those that very quickly came to the fore. And we stepped in, as you've already seen, in a couple of ways. And with the nudge or suggestion from your chair, Susan Ralston, we have really pushed out a lot of media on that subject. We weren't the only people who did that, but you may have seen more than a few pieces in which either we or our partners were highlighted, with the hoped for result that the community also supports those efforts. I mean, we have come forward with real dollars, but we want to see the community do the same thing. We have concern about domestic violence increase that we have seen some of, but frankly are likely to actually see more of once things open up and once children are being seen by somebody other than their parents, when spouses are able to make contact with other people we're likely to see even more calls. And that was the reason for us taking the opportunity to assist CASA in increasing its capacity a little bit. I participated in a virtual town hall meeting on April 17th that was sponsored by SPC and their Institute of Strategic Policy Solutions, and talked some about some of our actions. I would tell you that the Family Service Initiative has been a wonderful thing to have already structured, already in place. You would not be surprised that requests for April rent and utilities and so on have increased significantly. And we're on the verge of that occurring for May. We are still, we were looking to lapse quite a few of those dollars going into March. And so we are pretty comfortable right now that we're going to be okay from a budgetary standpoint on that line item towards the end of the year. And we'll have to look really closely at it for next year, not really knowing. Before those peaks came, we really worked to get ahead of it, and we repurposed some people in Judith's area who learned how to work in the FSI arena before the peak came. We made budget amendments for our Navigator organization, PIMS, and Gulf Coast Family and Community Service, so that some of the personnel we fund in their organizations that couldn't do their work, for instance, were school-based or court-based, that they could be repurposed to assist the navigators so that we wouldn't get clogged up, so to speak, and not be able to keep up with requests. And likewise, we did the same thing with 211. We worked on how to make some changes, not increases to their budget, but budget amendments across and some other more creative ways to staff up. So the result is that we have not, that whole process of assisting people through FSI has not gotten behind. And I think that was entirely because we thought about it before it got bad, as opposed to waiting until it got bad. We expect to be continuing to work with the school system and also childcare providers as they face the challenges that they have. The school system, among other things, concerns about students not being in attendance in a virtual way, and they may be rolling out some campaigns relative to digital learning attendance encouragement. And we're also going to be doing some things in appreciation for childcare providers, which we would do at any time, but now is a particularly good time to do that. So with that, I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Any questions, Ms. Ralston? Unmute Mrs. Ralston, please. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Susan.
First of all, I just want to thank Beth and the staff. Beth and I had been consulting at least weekly, if not twice a week in the beginning. So yes, I just, from the very beginning of the need surfacing and the need to reshuffle some of the money, I just, again, want to appreciate how everything was handled, and the staff is adjusting so well to working at home. A second topic, totally unrelated. Beth, I want to go back to something you just brought up on your report about the agencies that you're keeping an eye on for extreme lapse and viability. And you mentioned that you're coming around possibly for some agencies to a second phone call with the CEO. My only comment, which I know I've beat this horse before, is to make sure we don't get too far down the line with an agency before we inform a board president that there's something amiss. And you know, the timing's not right, but just in case these conversations get to a point where decisions need to be made, I wouldn't want board officers to be left in the dark.
Thank you. We'll take that into account. In many of the cases we're talking about, we're reducing the budget, but we're actually not reducing it below what they've spent.
Correct. correct.
So it kind of shakes them up, but the fact is they haven't, we're right sizing it to closer to what they have spent. But I appreciate that. And we've really taken that to heart when we've had agencies that are under performance improvement plans or corrective action plans.
Thank
And
you.
we learned that the hard way, what Mrs. Ralston's talking about, where in the past, the organization dealt only with the administration and not with the board. And we found out at the end, the boards didn't know anything about what was going on. So that's important. Thank you, Ms. Ralston.
Right.
And Mr. Dillinger.
Just to comment about food. We being the foundation had a surplus of food since the schools were closed. And JWB gave us some places to go, which primarily was our club with many locations. And we're now feeding over 515 kids a week at our club that would not have been fed. And they're very appreciative, and I'm appreciative because I wanted to get that food out. And so I want to thank JWB for bringing that to my attention.
We
Very
love
good.
being a matchmaker in that regard.
Any other questions for the Chief Executive Officer? Okay, hearing none. Laura, do we have any public comment? Open agenda.
It does not appear that we do. No public comment.
Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Beth, for the work the JWB did putting this together.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.